in 1973 at the New York Film Festival, Terrence Malick submitted this film, The Badlands. It was well received. It got a lot of praise. It was a critic's favorite. It only came runner-up in the Best Picture at the film festival because it came second to Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about Terrence Malick, who's part of the New Hollywood, but after making this movie, he kind of just almost went away.
As he did frequently throughout his career.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about his first movie, and also kind of the introduction to Martin Sheen. It is Badlands.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for finding us. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. Hey, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. It's a little thing you can do, but it's a big thing for us. It helps out the show. Yeah, we do have a Patreon. Check that out for some great content and an opportunity to tell us what movies we can review in the future for the show. Both Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for critics reviews as well as ours. And I think it's a right time, since it's turned 50, we're going to talk Badlands.
Holly is an...
I think it's Badlands. Badlands or
Badlands.
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 All right.
Holly is an impressionable teen who has taken an interest in 20-something garbage man Kit.
Yeah.
And when he starts killing people, she goes along with it. The two lovers try to make a life in hiding.
Including her dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But with the law always on their tail, can they survive the journey and each other?
So the emergence of New Hollywood, we always cite Marty Scorsese, we cite Spielberg, George Lucas, Brian De Palma, a lot of those that came out in the early 70s and late 60s. And Terrence Malick is one of them, but he doesn't get part of the conversation because he kind of, after the 70s, went away until 1977 when he did The Thin Red Line. All right, so Badlands, Terrence was a protege of Arthur Penn. You know, Arthur Penn did Bonnie and Clyde. He really pushed the boundaries of what is action, especially Bonnie and Clyde, because you get a lot of these great action scenes, but you get comedy, which is a it's a right kind of mixture of something you've never seen before. Like you see the bank robbery and it's fumbling and you're laughing at it. All of a sudden you see somebody get shot and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
and they're all in the same scene, which
Yeah.
you hardly ever did. So with Terrence Malick being Arthur Penn's protege, then he went to study at AFI. They're kind of really skill homes of filmmaking. And while he was a student at AFI, he did this movie and submitted to Edward Pressman. We know Edward Pressman.
Yeah.
Yeah. The producer who kind of did Conan Barbarian. He also did Wall Street because that's when he met Oliver Stone, and Oliver Stone wrote the screenplay for Wall Street. I think Pressman's also later on would do Talk Radio, which is a good movie if you ever see the movie Talk Radio. But also The Crow. It's interesting that without Edward Pressman, kind of Badlands would never really get off the ground.
Yeah. He had a kind of that, rising tide to a lot of film projects that probably wouldn't have gotten made. Some shouldn't have gotten made, but then,
Right.
he was really kind of a lift for a lot of these films that we now look back and see in an iconic sense. What's captivating, and I think the reason why, and it's not just because Malick went away, I think it's that more often than not, he had a niche group of people that liked his work, and it wasn't always a broader sense. Like when you look at Spielberg had 4-quadrant movies as well as his artistic films. Scorsese he caught a fervor of people that were interested in his films throughout his career. Yeah. People like Malick, people like Spike Lee, always kind of had that thing when they made their films for a specific type of person. Yeah. And some people liked him and some people didn't. I watched one Terrence Malick film 4 years ago and said, I'm not really interested in anything else.
Was it Night of Cups?
No, it was A Hidden Life, which is a 3-hour-long, very, very somber film about a family in hiding. And I appreciated the film, but I was like, my God, 3 hours. If I have to sit through another 3-hour movie again, I'm going to lose my mind. This is 90 minutes. So I was more than willing to check out a second attempt at Malick because I feel like he deserves more than one look.
Also, when we talk about New Hollywood, Francis Ford Coppola, and he did in the late 60s Rain People, which is kind of road trip. It stars James Caan, and they get two people that just kind of strangers, because he's hitchhiking, kind of form a relationship on the road. And through the late 60s, you get a lot of these road movies. And I think anybody comes a compilation list of best road movies, this would be one of them. And this is one of those expansion of telling a story, but also feature a road movie about you develop your story on the road. These are new things that are coming out, especially with the development, of the new highways and cars able to handle long trips. You get a lot of these road movies.
Yeah, and you also get a lot of movement too. And this film doesn't feature it as much, but films where you have the ability to shoot a scene in a car. You have the ability to actually utilize moving vehicles for that, because before that time period, before the frequency of road style films, you'd get a lot of that person driving and the backgrounds moving around behind them kind of things. You were actually able to get a camera
in the
and
studio,
shoot.
and you're doing with the broomstick poking him some.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
Got the guy swinging the lights, so it looks like they're driving by the street lamps at the end of the night.
So you have these authentic on the road shot films. And you can do it pretty cheaply, and you can pretty much, people leave you alone when you're out in the middle of nowhere shooting a movie. So yeah, there's a lot of advantages to do these road movies. Terrence Malick picked up the story. It's actually based on the true story of Charlie Starkweather, whose girlfriend went on a murder rampage, I think around Nebraska and Wyoming, and got caught. And this is in the 50s, in the mid 50s, and then use that as a launch pad to bring this story out. It's not a true adaptation to the story. It's just a vessel to get this movie made.
Yeah.
I think his name is called Kit in the movie.
Yeah, it's Kit and Holly in the film, whereas Charles Starkweather and Carol Ann Fugate, I believe.
Yeah.
The thing about it, too, is that Starkweather had been executed at this point, but the girlfriend actually was still looking at getting out of prison. She was still trying to be let
On
go
parole.
for time served, parole,
Right.
you will. So they didn't want to risk getting sued by getting details wrong, and then that kind of evolved into just making it like, well, we can have more freedom if it's a fake version of these characters. And Charles Starkweather would actually be referenced again pretty heavily in the 90s with the film The Frighteners, where the killers were modeled after Starkweather and his young girlfriend, and they would also, he actually, when he was being arrested, would say, I got one more than Starkweather. So he was actually comparing scores in that film. Truly gruesome events that I think actually might have been forgotten if not for the film adaptations of his character.
So Terrence Malick went on pursuit of auditioning actors and got a fresh face with Martin Sheen. The reason why he got the role is because Martin Sheen kind of showed up for the audition doing his best James Dean impersonation. And I think that's what captivating, because I think this is what Terrence Malick wanted, this James Dean kind of a guy who's kind of rebellious against the system. He's a malicious, driving force, and he's an awful bad guy, but he has this cool persona.
Yeah. Well, and you have, imagine if James Dean was a killer. Like, that's not
Right.
like James Dean was always, rebellious. He was always against the cause, but he never took out a gun or shotgun and blew people away.
No, this
just
is
for the heck
taking it a
of
little bit further, right? Because there's a little emotional entanglement, especially when talking about rebel without a cause. There's also this emotional frustration of being a teenager, not being understood, and rebel without a cause. He's not just doing bad things to be bad, but he's just misunderstood and nobody's listening to him.
Yeah. This is more of almost a perversion of James Dean. But I think the idea is there because you would look at, Holly's character and say, even though he's killing people, this girl has to love him or has to have this infatuation with him. How do you do that? Well, you make him hot. You make him Martin Sheen, and he's this attractive dude who's carrying on, and you want to follow him to the ends of the earth, even though you know it's not going to turn out well for anyone.
This is Sissy Spacek before she does Carrie. All right?
Yep, I think this was her first major role.
Well, both of them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and she was actually cast before Sheen in the role of Holly, which is interesting to cast a first-time actress in a lead role when you have no other person attached that might get a name.
I actually do that with my movies. I like to cast the female leads and then help with auditions of what do you think, And I think Terrence Malick did that with that because, I think Sissy was part of the audition. She sat with him and she's like, oh my God, that's James Dean. Well, this is going to work right now.
Yeah.
But Sissy plays this well, that she is this naive, molding dough kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think you have a lot of inspiration of Sissy Spacek if you go back and watch Neon Demon, if you see Ella Fanning playing that. If you did Neon Demon in 1972, it would have been Sissy Spacek.
Yeah.
But she's like this fresh, almost precious, doughy person that you can mold into what you want it to be. And it's not, I'm dancing around the movie that she's kind of like this virgin thing, but she's angelic, she's precious, you don't want to mess with her. And you know that she's going to be contaminated by anything that Martin Sheen's character is going to do.
Yeah, and it's that whole idea of when you've been closed off from the world for so many years, seeing anything that will get you out of that enclosure excites you and entices you. And you can see a lot of where she would take Carrie a few years later in Holly's character.
Right.
It's a different vein, but it's still along that same path, and you can see those similarities. I actually saw a lot of similarities, not just between this film and Bones and All, but between the lead female character in this film versus Bones and All, Taylor Russell's character.
Right.
She's a little bit clicked back into normalcy, in that film, but it is a sense of like, I don't understand the world that I'm in, and this guy does, and I'm going to follow him. And there's that road trip that's been perverted by murder, and in both of those films, I see a lot of similarities there.
I didn't catch that right away until you mentioned it. Right, I see a lot of influences of Badlands to Bones and All.
Yep, because they're both unapologetic as well. This film is never like, hey, these guys are doing bad things. They're showing the bad things and letting you decide, which is pretty obviously bad. But
and I'll get to literally up next to my review of Martin Sheen's doing this character, but it's on location. It's shot. It's never pretty. You have this in the late 70s. These emergence of unglamorous takes of realities, and that's New Hollywood coming in, of showing, like even with Mean Streets, this is not MGM production movies anymore with the fancy dresses and the dance numbers. This is showing really the gritty stuff, and it's very interesting that Terrence Malick would use the beginning of the movie taking out garbage, and you see the back of a garbage truck, which and you see him just pulling in garbage and treating garbage, and it's almost like him telling you this is not going to be pretty anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the big clue that I'm in for something dangerous is the scene where, it's that garbage scene, but it's when he goes and examines the dog and they're not sure if the dog is sleeping or dead, and he's like, let's just throw it in and see.
Yeah.
And it's just like this curiosity that is so like, I'm one of those people, I will watch a movie that features cruelty towards animals. I don't like it, but I will see it.
But you understand the whole point of the movie with that catalyst.
It reminded me a lot, actually, of, kind of funny enough, The Dead Zone. The book for The Dead Zone, which doesn't have this scene in the film, but the character that Martin Sheen would play in The Dead Zone, the first scene of that book, he's selling, I think it's Bibles door to door, and he comes across a dog and he kicks the dog to death just for no reason. Because he just wants to. And it's just like that level of insanity.
Because it's there.
Yeah, and you can see why Martin Sheen was cast in that role for the film version, even though that scene doesn't appear. It's because he's able to tap into this really unnerving style that even though he's a good-looking dude, you're like, I don't trust him at all.
And I'll get a little deeper into my review. But a little side note, you can catch Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez in the movie. They're little kids under the light pole with Terrence Malick. It's just funny that you can see both Martin Sheen's boys in the movie as well.
Yeah, it's funny that that's there. And then you also have Terrence Malick appearing as Terrence Malick with his Hitchcock cameo in the film, because the actor that showed up at the door was supposed to show up that day and never did. So they needed someone to do it.
And there's Terrence,
And he shows up, and I love that he shows up with like one of his signature hats. That's just what he's known for at this point. It might even be the picture of him on IMDb.
Right. Have you ever even seen a picture of Terrence Pratchett without a hat?
Yeah, it's just kind of like
Terry
that's
Pratchett,
part of what he is.
Yeah.
I like that he tried to go back and reshoot the scene and get an actor, and Martin Sheen was like, no, it was great having you there. I'm not doing another take of it. And I think that's something where like, listen to your actors. It's a fun little moment,
Martin Sheen should have said that to Coppola in Apocalypse Now. We did 80 takes. I'm done with this. All right. Okay. Up next is our review of Badlands. Martin Sheen is very much what they kind of use as the Joker in The Dark Knight. You can't negotiate with him. You can talk. He doesn't really care about money or anything, and he just enjoys watching the world burn. And he's that kind of a character that there's nothing you can do that's going to change him. Even put him to death, he's just going to be the same person. He thinks he's a good person. He tries constantly giving things away.
Yeah.
Even when he's in cuffs. You like this lighter? To a cop. Yeah. Well, here you go. Keep it. Yeah. Yeah. You know me.
He's got a weird style to him where even the guy says, like, you're a peculiar character. And he's like, think that'll help my defense? Like, think that'll get me out of here?
There's just nothing you can teach him. He's just going to be the same way. Murder to him is just a stepstone. But I understand if it bothers you.
It should.
Yeah, For him, it's like other people. Oh, it bothers you. I understand. But that car chase with the cops, like, hey, wasn't that fun?
What a great sequence. That was awesome. knowing the film had a $300,000 budget still kind of baffles me as to certain elements. I can see the cheapness of the film because road movies were inexpensive. You had actors who didn't do a lot of stuff beforehand.
And we did get a review. Half of it was Edward Pressman's money, half of it was Terrence Malick's money.
Yeah. And so there was that idea of like, well, we can shoot this cheap, but then when you see some of the action scenes, you see some of the... I hate to like go into like in depth on the squib explosions, but like the gunshots were really well done. And that's something that for an early feature, you almost expect that you're going to have like a gunshot and then you just see a hole in the shirt and someone squeezes ketchup out of it. Like you expect that kind of level of
that kind of cheapness to it. But there's definitely a craftsmanship to it. And I think people recognize it when it was submitted to a lot of film festivals. I understand this movie was made in 1972, but we kind of recall it 73 because it got distribution in 1973. But he submitted to a lot of film festivals and got a lot of accolades. But it constantly was rivaling Mean Streets with Martin Scorsese. And so I think it's an important evaluation because you need competitiveness. I think if it came out by itself with nothing else to attach to it, it won't get the accolades. I'm not saying this is a bad movie, but you need something to go with it that understands part of the conversation as well.
It's just a really hard movie to market. I mean, how often do you have movies where they're successful, but you're like, oh, but we're going to show you these two people on the run killing a lot of people. They're doing horrible things, but they're your protagonist. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm saying it's hard to make money on that.
It's very difficult, right? How would you sell this? Because you would probably have to sell, it's a road movie.
Yeah.
And then you get to see, this is not really much of a road movie.
And that's why you see certain things, like it's really hard to break out with that. I mean, again, going to the Scorsese, well, Taxi Driver was able to accomplish it. But that character is very anti-heroic evil. You know, he's still like has kind of the right reasons in some ways for what he does, but the wrong tactics, you know? Whereas these two, they're just like, you know, and every time that they get in trouble, Sheen's character Kip makes up an excuse for why what they did wasn't bad. Like, it's okay to kill them because they're not cops, they're bounty hunters. It's okay to do it if you're on the run. It's, you know, every excuse he comes up with, he's an evil human being.
And he's dumb.
And he's dumb. But like to change off of what he is with, you know, when you compare him to the Joker, he isn't that way in a lot of ways. At the same time, he's one of those guys, the Joker, I feel like, plans in his chaos a little bit. He still has, like, he knows how to get out of a room. I feel like Kit's character is like, shoot you, and he's like, damn, what am I going to do now? Like, it's almost like the joke of, like, drunk me at the bar on Friday night and then, like, hung over me in the morning, hates drunk me the night before. I think post-murder Kit hates murder Kit. Because he's like, damn, why did I do that? I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, he doesn't have hindsight.
Yeah.
Doesn't have foresight, or, well, he's had more hindsight than foresight. He doesn't understand the consequences until after it happens. But then he doesn't take the action. Look what you did, made me do, right?
Yeah.
You made me do this.
Yeah. He stumbles with that fish early on when he's trying to catch it in the net, and then he kind of blames his girl, and he's like, well, yeah, you know, just keep on relaxing, like... What was she going to do? Was she going to come over there and grab the other half of the stick and, like, lift it up for you? No, but he's mad and he's got to find a way to get that anger out. And going back to, like, the weird kind of selling point of this film, the studio actually originally tried to double bill this with Blazing Saddles because they just didn't know how to market this movie. And if you've ever been to a double feature of something, you don't usually double feature those two types of films, a comedic satire and, like, a hard-edged romance.
No, you put the
guns.
Producers with Blazing Saddles.
Yeah,
or something like that, right?
But the studio had no idea how to get this movie out there, and so they actually put it out like that, and then people hated it like that. So they pulled it back, they released them separately, and it was like, how do I get this movie to work?
Yep.
Really tough thing to do.
And so I think it gets celebrated now a little bit more, but it might be one of the reasons why Terrence, he did another movie in the 70s, A Day in Heaven, but never came back until 1997 when he did The Thin Red Line. And it's interesting. He went away for like the 80s. I don't know what the heck he did. But then
Can you
after,
imagine him in the excess of the 80s?
Right.
Maybe for the best he went away.
Yeah, he would do a lot of what Billy Freakin probably did.
Yeah.
But after Thin Red Line, and then he kind of mellowed out with Knights of Cups, which is an interesting movie. I've always been apologetic for that movie. I understand kind of a writer's process of not really writing.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Trying to get inspiration, and then you get lost in the inspiration and you want to come back.
Yeah, it's certainly a movie that's made me more interested in going back to the Malick well, because A Hidden Life, well, I was positive on the film. It's a movie that I was like, it was so damn long. It was 3 hours of just monotonous, like, really well-shot vistas, but I couldn't really care about anything. And I was, like, not interested in going back, but seeing this one, seeing what he's able to do with a tighter runtime when he's more constricted, I think was a better choice for him.
Excellent shot choices for every scene.
Yeah.
Of where do you want to do it. Everything was framed and really well crafted and appreciated. I'm not really pleased with the editing. I think it's kind of a murky editing, but every selection choice of what do you want to do in the movie is the right decision every time.
Yeah, well, Malick was always known for being a little bit particular, I guess, behind the scenes. He had 3 cinematographers for this film.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
I don't really know how the order of them went, but of course, like the famous Tak Fujimoto was one of them, so you can see a lot of that well-shotness. Robert Estrin is the credited editor for the film, but he was fired after his first edit of the film passed through, and then associate editor Billy Weber and Malick took over the editing process and, quote-unquote, fixed the movie. Whether or not that works
and
for
it's
you.
not really a smooth fix.
Yeah, it seems like the only person that he, without a doubt, got along with on the film behind the camera was art director Jack Fisk, who got along with a couple people on that shoot pretty well. He met his future wife, Sissy Spacek. They fell in love, got married. But Jack Fisk continued to work with Malick for, I think, 8 more films, and then would also, using that ability, be able to work with David Lynch through Sissy Spacek. On films like Eraserhead and Twin Peaks and future projects.
That is an interesting connection because David Lynch and Terrence Malick pretty much kind of, I would say, they're kind of the same fabric.
Yeah, when I was mentioning Spike Lee in relationship, David Lynch is a much better comparison, I think, where it's like they have a niche. They have a group of people that like their films, but there's a lot of people that don't. And if you can't get on that wavelength, it's really hard. Yeah. My wife had to watch like 30 episodes of Twin Peaks before she started going like, I kind of get what he's doing. You know,
I understand because there's a lot of people who love Terrence Malick, and I would put on social media 1997 Saving Private Ryan was the best movie, but people are like, it was Thin Red Line. I'm not going to jump on you. I understand your camp, buddy. I understand it's a great movie.
I have a friend that's owned 3 different copies of The Tree of Life. Every time they released it again, he was like, well, this is a new version of the film. I got to go check it out. And it's just like you have those Malick diehards. And when I expressed my disinterest prior to seeing this film,
and
a lot of people look at me that way.
I'm not part of the camp, but I understand the people that do.
He's an auteur, and I think I respect anyone who's able to do an auteuristic view, where like every film you watch of theirs, you're like, that's a Malick film. Yeah. And I do appreciate that, even though it doesn't always enter my my surf. Yeah. And I can't really go with it. But this one, I freaking love this movie. This was great. I was so entertained.
Yeah. It's our friend Jason P. Schumacher. He's a filmmaker here in the Twin Cities. It's his favorite movie of all time. Number 1.
That shocks me just because it's a movie that's, again, like, it's not a movie trying to make friends, if you will. It's a movie that's just what it is, and, you can either choose or
from
not.
the beginning of the movie, when they're garbage people, like, what am I going to watch? Why am I watching garbage people? But you understand from them.
Yeah. But when you look at this movie in the hindsight of what it was in that kind of biosphere of the 1970s, especially the early 70s, it's a movie that competed with Mean Streets and didn't, overtake. It was a movie released with Blazing Saddles. That was a really odd choice. And it was also a movie that supposedly inspired the Zodiac Killer to come out of hiding and write to the newspapers about the tagline of the film. Tagline was in 1959, a lot of people were killing time. Kit and Holly were killing people. And he actually, like, the Zodiac Killer supposedly came out of hiding to write about this film. And it's like, it carries this kind of grossness with it that's not the film's fault, but it is a dark film that really pushes
it's grossness, but this beautiful aesthetic to the grossness. It's really it's only Terrence Malick can do that.
Yeah, it's a very, very hard thing to do.
Because Cronenberg would do this. I'm like, whoa.
Well, Cronenberg would also have weird, like, beetles and stuff in his version. But yeah.
So what do you think of Badlands?
Yeah.
I think it gets a lot more accolades now than it did even in the future, even though it did win a lot of awards in film festivals. I think people appreciate far more now because, it's its own little anomaly. You can't attach it to anything else.
Yeah. For me, I mean, this is only my second Malick film because, like I said, the first one just didn't make me interested in seeing another one, but it is my favorite of the 2, if that helps at all. If you get a chance, especially this month while the Criterion sale is going on at Barnes & Noble, check out the Criterion Blu-ray of Badlands. It's a great looking Blu-ray. Some pretty interesting special features on there. If you're a physical media collector, go seek it out. And then let us know your thoughts on Badlands.
I like
down
how he's a
below.
little more of a tough guy in the cover than he really is in the movie.
Yeah, he's a sweetheart. Look at that sweet face. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
As Nick mentioned before, all those links are down in the description, and you can join us on any number of those levels. And you can find all my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
Hey, you can find my show, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts where I interview local independent filmmakers and writers from the Twin Cities area.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah.